screen. All right. So I think that Amy has emailed each of you all some handouts. I don't know if you've printed those or if you've even seen them. I'll share my screen with you so it's easy for us to look at together. But if you're like me, I like having stuff in front of me. And so I've got mine printed as well. And what you should have in front of you are the Affinity Group's presentation instructions, which are a walkthrough of what we're going to talk about today. And then there's also the little right pair share exercise. So the one titled post presentation discussion guide, that's kind of what you're walking your group through. Okay. And then the evaluation report is what we would like for you to fill out and return back to the church office. And there's information at the bottom of that. At the bottom of that handout, you can return this. And then the last thing is an important campaign dates handout, which we don't want you to cover. We just want you to provide it to folks. So there will be a little handout in some form, either in an 8.5 by 11 or just on a card or something. And you'll just provide those to people, but it's really not intended for you to spend extra time going through that. It's just FYI stuff. Okay.
I'm opening it up.
All right. So let's look first at just the presentation instructions. Let me kind of run through an overview of this, and then we'll have Taylor walk us through what will be the video portion, and then we'll have some time reflecting on that. You already know that while you're here on facilitating, we're going to use video. We've said that. We would like the presentations to take place between March 19th and 26th. If your group doesn't meet in that window, then just do it at the closest meeting to that date. Okay, if you're a monthly group and you don't meet in the third week of the month, don't worry about it. Just do it at the next time available to do that. And it could be that that's before. It's fine with us if you do it beforehand. If your group's meeting a little bit ahead of that shouldn't be a problem either. We want to encourage folks to begin praying. There is a right pair share exercise. I'm just kind of going through these bullet points. You're going to give them one of the handouts. I don't think I would probably give them the important campaign date handouts until I had done the other stuff. That way it's not a distraction for you. So hold off on giving them the handout until you're done, and then you can just pass those out. And again, our hope in this is not for you to be a salesperson about the campaign or to convince somebody of something that they're not excited about. We're not asking you to do that on our behalf at all. Really, what we're asking you to do is just help us inform the group. And if you've got somebody in your group that, doesn't think it's a great idea and would rather us, let the sanctuary building fall down, that's fine. You don't have to agree with them. You can hear them and acknowledge, the question or concern or comment that they have, but you don't have to try to convince them. I think in lots of years of doing this, I've found that if we will listen to people's concerns and objections and just extend grace to them and allow them time to work through some of that, it is often that they over time change kind of how they feel or soften about that. So in the moment, you may be getting their first reaction, and it may be, who knows? I'm not sure what that would be in this scenario. I'm just saying, don't let that bother you if somebody is vocal about something. Just to express appreciation for them sharing their thought or their concern. Be gracious, and you're not going to change their mind anyway. Let the Holy Spirit do that over time if that's something that needs to be done. And then again, the short evaluation form will take you 2 or 3 minutes as you're done. And then we'd like for you to get that back to Amy Wink there in the church office as soon as you can to the 26th. The sooner we get all those back, the sooner that we can react and adjust to whatever we learn there. And so it is helpful if you get those back to us. Obviously, if your group doesn't meet before then just get it back to us as soon as you can. Okay, no worries there. Questions on the run through? I'm getting lots of just blank. I'm not getting head nods, thumbs up. Y'all got to help me out now. All right, good, much better. That now you're, see, y'all, I appreciate it. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to have you do is just listen, kind of be prepared to jot down responses to these two. These are the two questions that we're going to ask everybody else to respond to as we go through Taylor's video. And so the two questions are, what part of the information just shared excites you most? And what is one primary question that you have in response to the information just shared? So what are you most excited about in what you just heard? And what's one question that you think that's important to you to find out the answer to? Okay. And so really, as Taylor walks us through what is going to become the video, be thinking about those things yourself. What kind of lights you up about this? And instead of doing a write, pair, share exercise, we'll just share a little bit as a group when she's done. All right.
You ready for me? Okay. All right. Well, I really am. I have a script, so I'm going to give it to you like I'm filming the video. All right. So, hi, First Church. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time to share with you about our Grace for Generations campaign. It's my hope that this presentation will give you the information that you need in order to feel informed and excited about our campaign to prepare our sanctuary for the next century of ministry. I also hope to hear from you with any questions that you might have so that we can improve our communication with the congregation in the days ahead. As you know, we are at a critical moment in our ministry. For 183 years, First Church has served as a spiritual anchor for the city that has grown up around it. And for 100 of those years, people have found a spiritual home at the intersection of 12th and Lavaca. People from governors and senators to the neighbors who sometimes make their bed on our doorstep. Our physical presence here is a witness to God's presence in downtown Austin. We really embody the truth that God makes God's home right in the middle of our lives, right alongside the halls of power and among those whose home is in the street. This is a church where I get choked up, y'all. This is a church where generations of people have come to find God's grace present, active, and alive. Even now, as we continue to make our way out of a pandemic and through denominational turmoil, we have clarity about our identity and our mission that draws more and more people to get swept up in the movement of God's grace that is happening at First Church. This place is special. And while we as a church are not the sum of our buildings, still our facilities are an essential tool for the ministry that we do. This is where we gather to learn and grow in the love of God and participate in the transformative work that God is doing. Our building needs help. It needs restoration. Our architects have confirmed that the outer shell of the building, the roof, the stonework, the stained glass windows, must be restored or replaced in order to keep the building operational. In the meantime, we have an opportunity to renovate the interior of the sanctuary as well. Over the 95 years that we have worshiped in that room, our congregation has several times managed to update and renovate the sanctuary periodically to better meet the needs of our worshiping community without completely altering the character of the space. It's time to do that again. We don't want a whole new sanctuary. We simply want our sanctuary to facilitate rather than impede our worship. We want to make updates to the chancel area. That's the area where the choir and the pastors sit. Updates that would allow more space, more flexibility for worship leaders, that would make that area physically accessible to those who simply cannot climb an awkward set of stairs. We desperately need to update the technology so that sound, lighting, media, and hearing accessibility are all really enhancing the worship experience rather than limiting what we can do or distracting us from the movement of the Holy Spirit. Now, to be clear, the sanctuary building is not the only part of our campus with work to do. And the truth is, this is probably step one of what will be a 2 or 3-step effort to bring our whole campus into a new century of ministry. But we have to focus here first and strengthen our deepest roots in that sanctuary building. This is the purpose of our capital campaign this spring, called Grace for Generations. We look back with gratitude at the generations before us 100 years ago, and we recognize what a leap of faith they took in relocating next to the state capitol and building a facility that would stand as a landmark location and a witness to God's grace. And then we look forward at the generations yet to come, our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, and with hope and in anticipation, we prepare a place for them as an act of love and as a sign of God's grace. This campaign depends on every household in this church taking seriously the call to reflect on God's blessings in our lives and prayerfully consider how we might invest in the future of our ministry. Every commitment, regardless of the size, is essential for our success, and we will give thanks for each and every one. So here's what you can expect in the weeks to come as we begin our Grace for Generations campaign. A campaign brochure with more specific information will be sent to every household in the church at the end of March. Then our campaign prayer team will be connecting with the congregation right after Easter to provide opportunities for prayer. We will also provide several opportunities for folks to consider making an advance commitment before Commitment Sunday in order to build that essential early momentum early in the campaign. And a sermon series is planned, with the kickoff of that beginning on April the 23rd. I want to emphasize that this campaign is really an opportunity for us to engage with God about our part in the future of First Church. It is a time for each of us individually to ask, God, what do you want to do through me? And then for all of us together as a church to ask, God, what do you want to do through us? So I hope you'll pray for the church and our leadership in the weeks ahead as we step into this transformational work for FUMC.
Nicely done. Nicely done. Okay, now before we do anything else, what I would like for you to do is take a minute or two and just reflect on what Taylor has shared with us, and go ahead and write down your responses to our 2 questions. What part of the information just shared excites you most? And what is one primary question that you have in response to the information just shared? And just imagine some fun music going on in the background while you ponder. Okay. Now, again, this is a variation a little bit. Like if your group meets on Zoom, then I would probably do it the way we're doing it right now. But if your group meets in person, then I think using the right pair share exercise that's on the handout, which I can put up on the screen, would be a little bit more efficient way to do that, especially when you don't want to take as much of like a Sunday school class time. And so somebody share what part of the information just shared excites you most, your response to question 1. Be sure to unmute yourself and feel free to jump in.
I'll say something that struck me right away, and that is that the challenges is both individual, which I think is important, and it's collectively, it's us. And I think you have to have both, and I like that.
Thank you.
I like the choice of words that Taylor used, that the building and the campus was a tool for ministry, which it is, of course. And then the phrase home for all, that I think that resonates with one of the flags that First Church flies all the time about caring for our neighbors, some of which have houses on the street, on our front steps.
What
I
jumped
like-
out to me- Go ahead.
I like that this place is special and a new century of ministry, and referring to the leap of faith others have taken, and that we can now be taking that same leap of faith that our grandchildren, great-grandchildren will be thankful for. But this place is special, I think resonates with everybody.
So good. So good.
What jumped out at me immediately was the phrase next century. We're looking forward here, and similar to Sally, the feeling is it's our turn. It's
Yeah.
our turn to step up and keep this thing going and provide a place for the next century. That plus the notion that every household is essential, no matter the size of the gift, every household is essential.
I think the focus on generations is really,
Yeah.
really says it.
Somebody else. Be sure and unmute yourself.
Tom, you're muted. Are you speaking?
I like it that we have established a legacy for future generations. That's what you're saying, right? That's what Taylor said.
Mhm.
I like what Taylor, when she talked about, we have governors or we have people living on the street who sleep on our doorsteps. And then I think of all of the many, many ministries we do. And so I got kind of excited to think about this is a step in allowing that to continue for another 100 years, because it's so important to serve the inner city, which is what we're doing.
Yes, ma'am.
And like Pete said, it's our turn.
Yeah. All right, let's jump to the other question. What is one primary question that you have in response to what was just shared? And whether that's yours or whether you think it's a prevailing question that we need to be aware about that others may have. Don't give us a whole list, but one would be great.
I had one, and it was, wait, what could the sanctuary look like? So just as I think that will definitely pique folks' interest in thinking, well, could it look like to have a more accessible space, and while still, giving respect and reflection to how things look right now. So that was something that I definitely can continue to think about that even as you went on, Taylor.
We were just having a conversation today with Rachel about this very thing that you're mentioning. It's kind of
Like when people vote, is that a thing?
Yeah. All right. Somebody else.
I'm a lifelong member of FUMC, and I don't want it to look a whole lot different. And so that would be my question is, how are we going? I used to be a teacher and a school librarian, and we used to always talk about, we'd get a new principal and they come in and they want to change things. And we would say, but this is our culture. You need to talk to the people that have been here for years about our school's culture. I think for me to feel comfortable, and I'm one of the few remaining, that, I know Emily grew up here, but I'm a lot older than Emily. that we need to talk about. What are the things we want to keep? What are the things that are going to make people feel like they haven't been left behind?
I think the notion of change in the sanctuary will probably be one of the biggest questions. I often joke about, becoming a reconciling congregation voted 98%, but taking the carpet out of the balcony was a huge fight. So change is always difficult, but that's what you're the task that we're charged with is messaging how that might work. And so hopefully there will be some renderings of what the sanctuary might look like in the printed material that comes out eventually.
Well, and Taylor, I think fairly early on, you said something that said prepare our sanctuary for the next whatever. Well, it's more than just the sanctuary. I noticed that. And then, the question that Kay Sterling came up with at the board meeting, but has the foundation been checked? So where you say that the architects tell us the windows and the whatever have to be fixed, you might say they assure us the foundation is okay.
They have assured us of that since the ceiling. I'm hesitant to assure of anything.
Well, they've told you though.
Yeah. No, we specifically had that work done, the conditions assessment, to determine, is there something big that we're missing? Is there some big looming threat out there that we don't know about? So.
Well, when Kay brought it up in the board, I thought, well, of course they have. But then several people have said, I'm glad she asked that question.
Yeah. So one of the things that, go ahead.
I was just thinking that people might, this doesn't necessarily mean anything to me, but what will be the plans and how long will we be out of the building?
Yeah.
Great question.
What are plans for being out of the building?
I did have one question that I wondered. We don't talk about a amount of money needed, or I didn't hear that. Is that going to be part of the initial proposal that we're trying to raise X amount of dollars to do this, or is that not something that we want to put out there? I mean, we could raise more or less, but I just wondered about that.
Great questions. So you've given us good stuff to think about. And one of the things that I want to point out to you is that oftentimes when we solicit information or feedback from people, we feel an obligation to try to know all the answers to that. And there's just no way to do that. Some of what we're doing right now is learning from you so that we can make sure that we get clarity to those answers. There's little danger in saying, I don't know, let me get back to you. But there is danger in making stuff up. And so we want to be careful not to do that, right, along the way. And so as you all give people an opportunity to share a few of the questions that they have, be sure that they know that you're going to capture their responses. You want their right pair share cards so that you get a chance to have all of that and pass that all back to campaign leadership. Sharing it there isn't the only opportunity that they're going to have for us to know what that information is. We want all that back. But there are things that you don't have to respond to right now. You're not trying to take an hour in a Sunday school class. I do think it's important to say, hey, let me find out an answer for you about that. Because there's just going to be things that are going to be asked that you're not going to know how they're going to be addressed in the future, even how the communication will address it. Yes, ma'am.
Hadn't it been said 6 million or 6.5 million? I mean, we've had a figure, right? And I think it's important to say it's over 3 years.
Good
that
feedback.
people need to know this is not all at once.
Yeah.
If I'm right, that it's over 3 years.
As far as we know, that's the plan.
Which
Well,
raises the
there-
next question, when's the next step? When are steps 2 and 3 coming down the pike? Do we know that that may make a difference in people's decisions on how much to give now? Do I give it all now? Do I wait for the next steps, or can I give something if I give it all now? You know, how do I allocate that?
Sure. Valid feedback. Okay. So in your circle, when you're doing this in your group, my encouragement would be, if you're doing it in person, give them a chance to write down their thoughts. In fact, I'm going to, just in case one of you doesn't have this. Are you all seeing Affinity
Yes.
Group's presentation,
Yes.
post-presentation discussion guide? Okay.
Yes.
So this is the exercise for the walkthrough. Give them an opportunity to pair up with somebody so that they have an opportunity to be heard. Some people are not going to speak up in a larger group, but this gives them a chance to be heard by someone. And so pairing them up, just have them pair up and share the responses to their 2 questions. Tell them we're just going to take 2 or 3 minutes to do that. And then as you bring them back together, you can either put those on a whiteboard or flip chart, or you can just listen and make sure and let them know that we want to collect their cards from them as we finish up. And then you can give them the important dates campaign handout, and then you'll see the closing portion there. Now, the next step for you is going to be, hang on just a second. Where did Zoom go? I'm in a new share. I want to show you this. Are you seeing the messenger evaluation report? Super. So this is as simple as your name here, the affinity group or groups that you're representing. If you've done those at different times, give us one for each. Like say you have 2 groups, fill out 2 reports for them, just because the tone or the questions may be different. So we'd like one from each so we know which group is being represented, the date when you did that, and then just your quick reflection on the presentation, like a sentence or 2. Unexpected questions. Here, you can list those out, or you can turn in the right pair of share cards and we can sort through those. But if you hear something that feels a little bit urgent, or kind of as a group, you could tell that's kind of their major concern, then put that in there. And then you just give your own rating here from 5 to 1 to these aspects of it. Any hot button issues or concerns, like if Richard and Jennifer are in your Sunday school class and you could just tell that we were really, really uptight about some aspect of this, and you feel like, this is probably something we need to be able to follow up on. A note here would help us be able to do that. If you've got somebody who is particularly concerned or upset or something like that, not anticipating that at all, certainly not wishing it on you, but if it's there, just draw it to our attention so that we can try to address those things if they're there. And if they're not, great. Okay. And then we want you to complete the report and return it to Amy. You can either drop it off at the church office, or you can scan it and email it to her at amy@fumcaustin.org. All right. Questions about anything you heard?
How are we gonna get the right pair share cards?
It's really just going to be an index card. And I think that Amy is going to make sure that we have index cards and pens or pencils available for you to pick up when you're doing your presentation. So if that's on site on a Sunday morning, that'll be a little bit easier. If you're an off-site group on a different day of the week, if you'll connect with her and ask her if you can come by
So
And
it's not gonna have anything written on it. It's just gonna
It's not.
be, okay.
it's just a
So
place
like,
for us to capture. Yep,
if we have some 3x5 cards,
Sure.
we can use
Yep.
them. Okay.
nothing special. All we're trying to do is get feedback, and be sure and tell them if they want us to follow up with them, they've got to put their name, number, and email on there. I mean, we don't have a way to guess at who's giving us information unless they're willing to put their contact information on there. If not, if they just want to share that anonymously, that's fine too. We're still going to see if we've got, what we're looking for is themes more than anything else, in case we need to make any adjustments in our messaging.
Richard, I've got a question. During
Yes.
the presentations, as people are writing down their questions, if they share their questions with the group, if the leader feels like they know the answer, are they supposed to answer, or are they supposed to simply gather questions knowing that y'all are trying to take the temperature of what questions are out there?
So I say I'm going to give you the consultant answer of it depends, right? Because sometimes you can kind of tell if this is going to like hijack the whole morning. And in some settings, you're just not going to do that. You're not going to go down that road. If it's an easy answer, like a perfect example was, how much is this going to cost? And Sally knew the answer. She said, I think we've said this is 6 or 6.1, right? That was great. But there are other questions that aren't nearly that easy to address, or that can just create larger discussions. I mean, obviously I avoided intentionally the discussions about how the sanctuary is going to look, right? Because first of all, I don't know that, but I do think that there, are important decisions to be made about that, and how we honor the past and make it accessible for the future, and how we do that, and so I'm staying away from that. I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to let Taylor and others in leadership address those questions, because it's just not something that I'm going to open, I'm not going to take the lid off that. So some of that just depends on you and what your comfort level is with the group. And, if it's a group of gals sitting around together having coffee and it's very informal, then yeah, you're probably going to spend more time talking about some of that stuff than if you're in a Sunday school class and somebody's prepared a lesson that they want to get done that week.
Richard, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If the campaign does, excuse me, does not reach the 6.1 million,
We do not speak of this.
will there be a loan?
I would imagine that even if the campaign reaches its goal, that there will be a loan, because y'all aren't going to spend 3 years collecting cash before you start this. And again, that's me speculating a little bit, but you've got scaffolding set up outside to prove it. And so I would imagine you're going to have some short-term financing almost no matter what you do. But I have heard Taylor say that the scope of what you all do in the sanctuary is going to be affected by how much money is raised potentially. So, I would say that that's possible. But I think it's a great question for us to remind, to say out loud to other people, Dick. I appreciate the question.
Of course, I've got a vested interest in who gets the loan too. So.
Anybody else? Other questions before we turn you loose?
Richard, do you have any specific suggestions for groups that meet by Zoom and how to collect their cards per se?
Yes, I do. I think you could, depending on how savvy they are, they may put them in the chat window. But if they're not, I would see if there would be a way for them to fill those out and for you to get them from them, even if it's delayed. Again, for me to scan a document and send it to you all is like the easiest thing on the planet, because I do it all the time, but I didn't have a scanner a year ago, and so that's just not going to be an easy ask for everyone. But if I had the group, I would want their feedback. And so I would try to collect it and just say, hey, if you'll fill your card out and write your thoughts down, I'd love to get those from you next Sunday, or, whenever I see you, or they could always drop it off at the church, but I think it'd be better. Look at that. Look at that. To a young person.
Exactly.
A Google Doc has been suggested, Pete.
My group's not young people,
What's that?
but maybe perhaps
I
emails.
promise. We can, if you want to call me, we can totally figure it out. Basically, you could send the link, open it, and people can type live. And it would save it all, so then there wouldn't be back and forth.
Well,
Like, if they're on
definitely-
Zoom, they know they can do it for sure.
okay, I'm definitely showing my age and that I did not default to think of that response. But I
Well,
have.
and I
been-
use
but I have been
Google Docs all the time and I didn't think of it.
Also that you have an actual scanner. My phone is my scanner.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't.
and you
right?
can scan very easily from your phone, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, I had 10 years of documents in my office that I put completely all in the cloud, scanned every bit of it and put it all in the cloud last year. And so it's taken me all of COVID, the whole pandemic to get it done, but I'm finally completely digital. So I actually own a scanner.
Can you scan
That's
by
fair.
phone? Or are you doing JPEGs? Or are you taking photos?
No, you can scan.
To a
Yeah, if you go
PDF?
And a PDF.
yeah, if you go to your notes app,
Okay.
you can scan documents there.
All right, thanks.
Any
see
other
Chip.
questions? Chip, I
Rich.
see your hand over there.
This sounds like a monkey wrench, and I hope it doesn't come up. But I remember when Jan and I first showed up in the 1990s, there was a discussion that we didn't participate in, which was, okay, shall we sell this building and relocate? And, you know, if 200 people get this or 1,000 people get this, somebody may ask it. And I think we're past that, but I'd like to hear something a little more efficient, and I have to excuse myself. There's somebody at the door.
No worries. Yeah, that question's been expressed, that concern's been expressed, and I think church leadership's been pretty clear that y'all feel like it's strategic to be where you are. But again, I think that that's something that Taylor will have to continue to address, at least in the short term. But I mean, clearly the fact that we've got scaffolding around the sanctuary building, I don't think the short-term plan is to change location. Okay. Thank you all so much. If you would like, I don't know why you would need it, but I'm certainly willing to give you my number, my cell phone number. If you want to reach out to me with a question, I would probably rather you call me than call Taylor. And so if you have one, my number
She
is
would too.
my number is 479-979-7723. My name's Richard Rogers. 479-979-7723. And if you call or text me and say, hey, Richard, I need 3 minutes to ask you a question or need clarity about something, I would love it. And
Can
so
you
just don't
Put it in
hesitate.
the chat, please.
Well, sure. It's a grand idea.
Or in a Google Doc.
Nope. Stretching me too far.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you all so much. Taylor, anything else? Kurt, Jan, anything you want, any parting shot from anybody? Seeing a bunch of head shaking, so, all right. Blessings, you all.
I have some questions for
When-
Emily and Taylor, but regarding my group, but I don't
When,
need to bother the entire group with those questions.
when will we have the video link to share the presentation?
Soonish.
Okay.
It won't take her long to edit it and get it uploaded and stuff once I actually record it.
So is there gonna be additional visuals in addition to just you talking, Taylor?
No.
Okay.
And just confirming, March 19th to 26th is our window.
Yep.
I only ask because I think the initial note had a slightly different date.
Yeah,
It could have, we pushed back to get out of spring break. We're trying to get behind spring break and make sure that we don't, so that could have been a stumble on my part earlier.
These are better.
I
I
just
like
want to
these dates better.
We're trying to avoid spring break and Holy Week. So we're sandwiched in between. Okay. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bye.
Cool.
Have a
Night.
good week.
Dick, I know you've got questions, but I have to run the Zoom that was supposed to start at 6:30.
I
Okay.
can hang around.
Yeah,
But this is on my Zoom account and
Oh.
I gotta start another one.
okay,
Okay. Hey, Dick, I'll just
So-
give you a phone call.
very good. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay,
bye.
let me know if you need anything from me.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.